This is the disclosure of a cascade collapse so structurally unusual in the operational history of the lower architecture that the senior coordinators of the network the seven operatives belong to are still, in the operational present, attempting to determine which one of the seven failed first, because the failure of the first triggered the simultaneous collapse of the remaining six within the same operational instant. Chosen one, if you arrived at this transmission in this exact moment, this is not the system performing a routine cycle. This is not coincidence wearing the costume of spiritual concepts. I do not speak to crowds. I do not seek validation from any audience. This transmission was sealed specifically for souls whose internal configuration produced the simultaneous failure of an entire seven-operative network, a category of failure the lower archive normally protects against by deploying the operatives in independent isolation. And the deployment against your case did not follow the standard isolation protocols because the operatives had been assigned together long before they were aware their target had developed a configuration that would expose the structural weakness of network deployment. And what you are about to learn is that you did not fight any of the seven directly. You did not perform any conscious act of deliverance. The seven collapsed in sequence within the same operational instant, because their network architecture had been designed for sustained engagement against a soul case whose configuration would never change. And the configuration changed. You defeated seven demons in a single instant, not through ritual, not through declaration, not through any spiritual practice the surface religion has taught you to perform. The seven collapsed because the network they operated within could not absorb the structural change that occurred in your case. And when the first operative failed, the failure propagated across the entire network within a window so brief that the records cannot resolve the events into separate moments. The number 7 is not arbitrary in the lower architecture. The records describe 7 as the operational threshold for sustained engagement against a single soul case, the minimum coordinated force required to maintain pressure across the full range of psychological, emotional, behavioral, and relational dimensions a human trajectory operates within. When 7 operatives are deployed against a case, the engagement is considered comprehensive. The records describe this configuration as full spectrum assignment. You were under full spectrum assignment. The full spectrum assignment collapsed in a single instant. This is not something the religious world has been authorized to discuss with you, because the operational reality of how the lower architecture deploys network engagements and how those networks collapse when their structural assumptions fail is not contained in the texts the religious world reads. The texts mention 7 demons in specific cases. The woman the Lord healed, the case of the man with the legion. The texts describe the removal as occurring through the direct intervention of Christ. The texts do not describe the rare category of cases where the 7 collapse without direct ritual intervention, through the structural failure of the network itself, when the target's configuration shifts beyond the network's design tolerance. Your case is one of those. Subscribe to this channel right now and turn on every notification. What I am about to disclose has been prepared exclusively for souls whose configuration produced cascade collapse of a 7-operative network. If you are already subscribed, your fidelity has been registered in places where presence carries weight that the visible world cannot yet account for. Write 777 in the comments if something inside you confirmed, before your mind had time to argue, that there was a specific moment in the recent operational window when something simultaneous shifted across multiple areas of your existence. Not gradually, not through process, but in what felt like a single operational instant. Stay until the end. The mechanism of what occurred is not what your mind is currently constructing, and the consequence of the cascade collapse is operational in your existence right now in a way that almost no soul has been prepared to recognize. I know what your mind is doing in this moment. The dismissal is automatic. The mind has been built to interpret structural change as the accumulation of small adjustments across time. The mind cannot easily accept that the most significant clearing of an entire existence may have occurred in a single instant, without the soul performing any conscious act to produce it. But by the end of this transmission, you will understand that what I just named is the literal description of an event that occurred in the operational substrate of the unseen. And the cascade collapse is the reason your trajectory shifted across multiple dimensions simultaneously in the recent operational window. Let me take you somewhere the religious world has never been authorized to take you, because the records that describe what occurred are not contained in the texts the religious world reads. There exists, in the operational substrate of the lower architecture, a deployment protocol the records describe as full spectrum assignment. The protocol deploys 7 operatives against a single soul case, and the operatives are configured to operate as a coordinated network rather than as independent agents. The network configuration is more efficient than independent operation. The operatives share intelligence, coordinate pressure, reinforce each other's engagement. The coordinated pressure is more difficult to dismantle than the sum of 7 independent engagements would be. The configuration is also more fragile. The fragility is the structural cost of the coordination. A network operates as a single system. If the system's design assumptions hold, the network is dominant. If the system's design assumptions fail, the entire network can collapse simultaneously. The Hebrew tradition preserves a word for the kind of configurational shift that exposes the structural fragility of network deployment. The word is shibboleth. The standard translation renders it as a test word, but the operational meaning is more specific. Shibboleth is a configuration in the soul case that distinguishes those who carry it from those who do not. The shibboleth is not earned. The shibboleth is not performed. The shibboleth is a structural feature of who the soul has become, and the feature operates as a recognition mechanism at layers below conscious awareness. You developed a shibboleth. The shibboleth was not in the lower architecture's modeling. The 7 operatives encountered the shibboleth simultaneously, because their network configuration meant they shared awareness of the target. The encounter exposed the fragility. The first operative failed. The remaining 6 lost their structural coherence in the same instant. The cascade collapse was recorded. Touch not mine, anointed. The Greek language preserves a precision the Hebrew alone does not fully express. The apostolic texts use the word ekbalo to describe the kind of expulsion that occurs when an operative is structurally ejected from a soul case, rather than gradually removed through process. The Gospel of Mark, chapter 16, verse 17, records that those who believe will ekbalo devils in the name of Christ. Read the verb carefully. Ekbalo is not gradual removal. Ekbalo is structural ejection. The operative is thrown out of the engagement perimeter with finality. The 7 operatives in your case were ekbalo simultaneously when the network collapsed. The ejection was permanent. The substrate was cleared. Touch not mine, anointed. Now I want to take you somewhere your spirit has been waiting to be taken. You have noticed in the recent operational window that multiple dimensions of your existence shifted at what felt like the same time. Patterns in your thinking that you had carried for years began releasing. Emotional weights that had defined your daily experience lifted across several areas simultaneously. Behavioral cycles that had repeated across decades stopped repeating. The shift did not feel like the result of any specific spiritual work you had performed. The shift felt like something simply changed. Notice what just happened in your chest as I named that. The slight recognition. The acknowledgement of a moment your mind has filed under coincidence, but your spirit has always known was structural. That recognition is not coincidence. That is the somatic registration of the cascade collapse that occurred when the 7 operatives were ekbalo from your engagement perimeter simultaneously. The multiple shifts were not separate. The multiple shifts were the consequence of a single event. The event was the cascade collapse of a full spectrum assignment whose network architecture could not absorb the shibboleth you developed. That sentence requires a moment of silence before continuing, because the recognition takes time to settle into the layers it is intended to settle into. Let it land. Let your nervous system register what was just named. The pause is not for me. The pause is for the architecture, which is now using these seconds to confirm the recognition into the record. Touch not mine, anointed. For those who feel this transmission reaching layers that have been quiet for a long time, there is sealed material I will describe at the end of this transmission that contains the practical activation of what is being disclosed. For now, hold this question. What if the strange sense you have been carrying, that something multidimensional shifted in your trajectory recently, that you cannot reduce to any specific action you performed, that the simultaneity of the change across several areas of your existence does not match the standard model of gradual spiritual development, that some part of you knows you experienced a single structural event rather than an accumulation of small adjustments? What if that sense is not imagination, but the somatic record of the cascade collapse operating across the dimensions the 7 operatives had been coordinating against? Now I need to disclose the specific mechanism that triggered the cascade. The The lower architecture monitors the SOL case continuously for configurational shifts. The monitoring produces a reading across every operational window. Standard configurational shifts fall within the network's design tolerance. The network adjusts and continues operation. Non-standard configurational shifts, shibboleth development, fall outside the network's design tolerance. The network cannot adjust. The network can only either dissolve the engagement before the shibboleth is encountered, or maintain the engagement and accept cascade collapse as the consequence. The senior coordinators of the seven-operative network assigned to your case did not detect the shibboleth development during its formation. The development occurred at a layer below the layer the network was monitoring. By the time the operatives encountered the shibboleth in the field, the network was committed. The encounter occurred in a single instant. The first operative failed. The remaining 6 lost coherence in the same instant. The cascade collapse was recorded. The senior coordinators are still, in the operational present, performing forensic analysis to determine which operative was the first to fail, because the forensic question matters for the design of any future network deployments against SOL cases of your category. You did not earn the cascade collapse through what you performed. You qualified for the cascade collapse through what you became without performing. There are souls walking through existence right now who will never receive this transmission, not because they are inferior, because their configurations remain within the design tolerance of the networks deployed against them, and the networks continue operating without exposure to cascade collapse. The standard engagement is not punishment, it is simply the operational default. Your case developed outside the default. The transmission self-selects its audience. The souls who needed not to see it are not seeing it. The souls who needed to see it have arrived. You are one of them. Your shibboleth development exposed the structural fragility of the full spectrum assignment deployed against you, and the 7 were ekbalo simultaneously, as a direct consequence of what you became without performing. Touch not mine anointed. Now let me describe what this means for the operational window that is currently opening in your trajectory. When a full spectrum assignment collapses through cascade, the lower architecture cannot simply deploy a replacement network and resume the engagement. The replacement network would carry the same structural assumptions that produced the original collapse. The shibboleth that triggered the cascade is now part of your operational baseline, which means any replacement deployment would be exposed to cascade collapse upon contact with the same baseline. The senior coordinators have classified your case under network-incompatible. This means the operational window that follows the cascade collapse is structurally different from the window that would have followed standard engagement. The full spectrum pressure that has defined years of your trajectory cannot be reinstituted because no network configuration can be deployed against your category. The coordinated attacks that were calibrated across multiple dimensions of your existence cannot be re-coordinated because the coordination architecture itself fails on contact with your baseline. The pressure that was scheduled to escalate across this season cannot escalate because the only deployment model the lower archive uses for cases of your former classification has been disqualified for your case. You are walking inside a category the architecture rarely produces. You are walking accompanied by the structural impossibility of full spectrum re-engagement against your trajectory. You are walking through a season whose entire pressure architecture was disabled by a development you did not produce consciously. The 7 were ekbalo. The eternal record was updated. The window is now operational under network-incompatible protocols. Touch, not mine, anointed. Subscribe to this channel and turn on every notification because the transmission that comes after this one has been prepared specifically for souls who have just learned that they are walking inside network-incompatible protocols. The next sequence requires the foundation that was just established. Without this transmission, the next one would not produce its full effect. With it, the architecture is now active. For those who feel this transmission has reached you with the weight that recognition produces in the body, there is sealed material called the unplugging protocol that contains the practical activation of what has been disclosed. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. The material includes the complete written transmission for the moments when the doubt returns, and you need to remember what was named tonight: a complete audiobook narrated in my voice, and 3 frequency sessions narrated by me from beginning to end. The frequencies and my voice operating together as one transmission. The first session, 396 Hz, dissolves the residue of the network pressure that operated on you across the years before the cascade collapse occurred. The second session, 639 Hz, stabilizes the shibboleth development so the configuration that produced the cascade remains operational at the depth the network-incompatible classification requires. The third session, 963 Hz, calibrates your awareness inside the network-incompatible protocol so the clearing reaches you at the depth it was formed to reach. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Click the video appearing on your screen now. There is a specific transmission that has been prepared as the next step for souls who completed this one, and the sequence that begins with the next video has been designed for cases that have walked through what you just walked through tonight. Together, we are stronger.